Welcome in to Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right now, we're diving into the players the Jaguars waived earlier today, the players that they have claimed, and their practice squad additions. It has been a busy 24 hours in Duval. The Jaguars cutting their roster down to 53. They've made subsequent moves after that. We're going to dive into, again, the roster moves that have been made today, Wednesday, August 31st. We've got a stormy afternoon out here in Duval County. Before we get into that, I am excited to share with y'all, we've officially launched our channel membership on our YouTube channel. If you go to our YouTube page, you can find all the info. I'll drop a link in the description below. We've got some sweet badges, emojis, members-only live streams upcoming, discounts on Gen Jag merch, and a whole lot more. Again, you can check that out at the link in the description below. I'd like to remind you to please hit that notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss a show on here. You can follow me on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo for all the immediate and latest updates, and of course Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. So, getting into the roster moves the Jaguars made today. Again, Wednesday, August 31st. The Jaguars waived outside linebacker Jameer Jones. They waived both of the kickers on their 53-man roster, James McCourt and Jake Verity. They released offensive lineman Will Richardson, and they waived safety Josh Thompson. Looking at these moves, obviously when the news came in that they were getting rid of both kickers, that's a clear indication that they had a plan to bring in someone else at the kicker position, which they did, and we'll dive into that here in a moment. Jameer Jones was one of the outside linebackers that made the roster. Was a little bit of a surprise that he made it, but obviously the Jaguars decided to amend that decision and give his spot to someone else that another team released, and we'll take a look at that, of course. Will Richardson, I thought, really struggled throughout training camp and the preseason, playing primarily at tackle. Did not look good in pass protection. He's been released by the team. It was his 5th year with the team after being a 4th-round draft pick several years ago. So the Jaguars now only have 8 offensive linemen, which I don't think is that big of a deal. But Will Richardson, I did expect to be released at some point. I did not think he was going to have staying power on this roster. With the way that it was constructed, that ended up being true. Josh Thompson was a standout on special teams, the former Texas cornerback who has converted over to safety and was just a standout as a gunner, really putting in full effort, showing his speed, his hustle, and making some big plays on special teams. He was waived as well. So those are the 5 players that the Jaguars waived earlier today in order to claim 5 more players. And again, these are all players that are on the active roster. These are not practice squad players. If the Jaguars claimed a player today off waivers, they're claiming him to their 53-man roster. And we'll jump into those players right now. Kicker Riley Patterson, claimed from Detroit, spent some time in Minnesota as well. Sorry, we had a little thunder going on around here. Hopefully it's not distracting y'all as much as it's distracting me. But Riley Patterson went 13 for 14 with the Lions in the regular season in 2021. Obviously a very accurate kicker based on what we've seen from him in the NFL so far. The Jaguars special teams coordinator Heath Farwell was monitoring that situation, was kind of hoping that Patterson would end up becoming available. He did. The Jaguars pounced, and now he is the only kicker on their roster. He did struggle a bit to get the ball out of the back of the end zone on kickoffs this year in the preseason, only converting 3 of his 7 kickoff attempts into touchbacks. So a little bit interesting there, considering Matthew Wright was fairly accurate for the Jaguars last year, and the reason they ditched him earlier in the offseason was because he struggled with getting the ball into the end zone on those kickoffs. But Riley Patterson, an accurate kicker, that is the key here. If the Jaguars really need to, they can certainly use Logan Cook as a kickoff guy and just have Riley Patterson focus on banging home those extra points and field goals. Looking at wide receiver Kendrick Pryor, the Jaguars brought him over from the Cincinnati Bengals, and if there's a team in the league that you want to poach their receivers, it's probably Cincinnati, one of the best receiving corps in the NFL right now, perhaps the best. Kendrick Pryor was a preseason standout for them, an undrafted free agent this year. He's 5'11", about $185 to $190, so not a huge frame, certainly, but 5'11" is enough to get the job done. Showed ball skills, showed speed. He ran a 4.37. He was one of the most productive wide receivers in the NFL during the 2022 preseason for the Bengals, and he showed off the ability to win on the outside, which is something the Jaguars really need in their wide receiver room. He's a guy that played a good amount of special team snaps for the Bengals throughout training camp in the preseason as well. So they view him as an upgrade to their wide receiver room, getting him in there at the back end of the room with him and Tim Jones kind of rounding it out at 5 and 6 in terms of the Jaguars wide receivers. They also signed running back Michael Hasty, a former 49ers draft pick, who, when you look at the 49ers, they just keep on churning running backs. They bring running backs in, they let them go. They're kind of a revolving door at the position. But JaMychal Hasty is a talented runner who I think is kind of like an upgraded version of Mekhi Sargent, who the Jaguars had this preseason in training camp. Hasty has a good amount of experience, and he's shown the ability to be an effective receiver out of the backfield. He's also got great lateral quickness and good ability in space overall. And coming from that 49ers backfield where they ran a lot of zone rushing attack, he's going to be asked to do the same thing in Jacksonville quite a bit. And getting him in here as your fourth running back behind Snoop Connor at number 3, and obviously James Robinson and Travis Etienne at the top of the room, I think you now have a really well-rounded out running back room. Linebacker Ty Summers was brought over from Green Bay. We've seen that pipeline going back and forth between Green Bay and Jacksonville over the last week or so, with the Jaguars trading for Cole Van Lanen, the Packers signing Rudy Ford, and then the Jaguars claiming Ty Summers, the linebacker, off waivers. He is going to be primarily a special teams player for the Jaguars. He's done that for the Packers over the last couple of years, and he'll come in as your last off-ball linebacker, so you won't really see him on the defensive side of the ball unless you've got a bunch of injuries in front of him, but he'll be expected to come in and compete on special teams for the Jaguars, as will safety Tyree Gillespie, who was a 2021 fourth-round pick by the Las Vegas Raiders, was traded to the Tennessee Titans, Jaguars AFC South rivals, only a couple weeks ago. And it was a conditional 7th-round pick that the Titans sent to the Raiders in exchange for Tyree Gillespie. He did not make the Titans roster, and thus the Raiders do not receive that conditional 7th-round pick, but benefits the Jaguars, who get a guy who, again, a 4th-round pick last year, great athleticism, great physicality. I watched him a lot at Mizzou in college, studied his game. The flashes and the athleticism and the talent are there at the safety position, but there was a little bit too much inconsistency in his game. Certainly needs to develop as a safety, but the reason the Jaguars were anxious to get him in here is because during his rookie season for the Raiders, he was a special teams standout. He's got great speed and great physicality and should upgrade the Jaguars' coverage units on special teams. Again, all 5 of these players are now on the Jaguars' 53-man roster. Looking at kicker Riley Patterson, wide receiver Kendrick Pryor, running back JaMychal Hasty, linebacker Ty Summers, and safety Tyree Gillespie. The Jaguars also signed 11 players to their practice squad: defensive tackle Israel Antwine, wide receiver Kevin Austin, offensive lineman Coy Cronk, offensive lineman Nick Ford, offensive lineman Darrell Williams, cornerback Gregory Jr., who was the 6th-round pick out of Wichita Baptist this year, linebacker Grant Morgan, tight end Garrett Prince, running back Mekhi Sargent, who I mentioned earlier, and quarterback E.J. Perry, and safety Ayo Oyelola, who is an international player pathway program participant, so he will not count against the Jaguars' 16 practice squad spots. They will have 17 total practice squad spots available, including the international pathway program spot that is going to Ayo Oyelola. So looking at the practice squad, obviously you're excited to get Kevin Austin back, who is a priority free agent. Same goes for E.J. Perry. The Jaguars like the talent these two players have. They just want to continue to develop them. They didn't show quite enough to really compete for a 53-man roster spot. Israel Antwine was a standout for the Jaguars during training camp in the preseason. The big surprise here, if you will, is that J2 Fele, a 2021 fourth-round pick for the Jaguars, did not make the 53 or the practice squad at this point. The Jaguars should still have 6 practice squad spots available. I would expect outside linebacker Jameer Jones and safety Josh Thompson, both of whom the team really like, to be signed to that practice squad if they are able to clear waivers. I might expect to see James McCourt on the practice squad as well if the Jaguars do want to keep another kicker around. And that would put them at 13 practice squad spots, not including Aola, which would give them 3 spots left. No guarantee that they'll bring Jameer Jones or Josh Thompson or even James McCourt back, but if I had to make a prediction, I'd guess you'd see at least 2 of those 3 players back on the practice squad for the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars got a lot better today in terms of their depth. I think Riley Patterson is a more accurate kicker than what you've seen roll through Jacksonville over the last couple months. Kendrick Pryor gives you a lot of speed and outside receiving ability and also special teams ability. And each of the Jaguars signings today, or waiver claims, I should say, bring that special teams ability. I think JaMychal Hasty upgrades the running back room with an athletic back who can get the job done out of the backfield. Ty Summers upgrades your special teams, and so does Tyree Gillespie. So I think they had a good day overall. Definitely some names that were out there that were not picked up that were disappointing to some Jaguars fans. But I think the Jaguars had a good day. I like what they're doing with their practice squad, keeping Kevin Austin around, Gregory Jr., Israel Antwine, E.J. Perry. Garrett Prince is a very athletic young tight end out of UAB. So overall, Jaguars got better today. Is their roster finalized? No. They will continue to try to upgrade it as much as they possibly can throughout the rest of 2022, leading up to week 1 and beyond. I think that the Jaguars are in a much better position to compete right now, and the signings made today will help them do that, especially on special teams. That is going to do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you're interested, please check out our channel membership that we just launched. It helps support what I'm doing here and just helps the channel grow and helps make it sustainable for me. Some really fun perks that you can pick up over there too. You can check it out on our YouTube page. I'll drop a link in the description below. Of course, hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. Follow Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you want to support the channel even further, you can go check out our website, genjag.com, where we have a lot of fun gear up on the site. Some Duval merch for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, Duval. Have a great day.